Recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the panel for being here today. Your stories illustrate how the exclusion process is broken, but this hearing is avoidable. I partner with my colleague, Mr. Kine, to send a letter to Secretary Ross asking for 10 common sense changes to the process. 37 other members signed on our letter. Secretary Ross shrugged off our suggestions. It's especially ironic since USTR's exclusions process for Section 301 tariffs implemented some of the exact same things we asked Chairman Ross to do, such as more generous retroactive relief and allowing trade associations to file. My district in northern Indiana makes 85% of the RVs you see on the road and is home to major boat and trailer manufacturers as well. I've been watching this process closely because a working exclusions process matters for manufacturers in my district and their supply chains. I want to emphasize a few of the major problems using your stories today, as well as statistics my office compiled from regulations.gov. Mr. Adams, your story shows the importance of getting posted on regulations.gov because it determines retroactive relief. But these days, most requests end up sitting for 3 to 4 weeks before being posted, and a few sat for as many as 12 weeks. Yet, even after sitting for weeks, some are forced to resubmit and restart the clock. It could be over a minor clerical error, even though they posted others with the same error. In other cases, Commerce was unclear on what ranges of dimensions it allowed. Eventually, so many got kicked back because of it, everyone just split applications into individual dimensions, which exploded the workload. 69% of steel and 83% of aluminum requests that made it through the 30-day comment period had no objections from domestic producers. However, Mr. Chang, you pointed out a fundamental unfairness facing requests with objections. Of the 5,700 steel and aluminum objections posted, only 54 of those were made public before the end of the comment period. This leaves requesters with no formal way to challenge claims made in the objections. This is basic due process. I'm worried that without any rebuttal process, Commerce is making multi-million-dollar decisions based on an incomplete picture. It becomes a very expensive he said, she said moment. As approvals and denials start to roll in, we see opaque and inconsistent decisions. This was foreshadowed by a Commerce official who told the Washington Post back in June, it's going to be so unbelievably random and some companies are going to get screwed. Commerce gives one of two reasons for denying a request. One, either there's a sufficient domestic quantity and quality available, or the application was incomplete. It never discloses the analysis that led them to conclude a sufficient domestic supply exists, and it never says what made the application incomplete. 7 requests have been denied on the basis of sufficient supply despite having 0 objections. This means the company said there wasn't sufficient domestic supply. Domestic industry didn't disagree, but Commerce said there is. How did they arrive at that conclusion? It's a black box. Many were forced to resubmit steel requests because they didn't include iron content in their application. Yet there are numerous examples of requests that were not just posted without iron content, they were approved too. There are also multiple instances of companies whose requests for the same tariff line only differed in dimensions. Yet one was approved, the other one was denied because Commerce said it was incomplete. Commerce doesn't explain why one was incomplete but the other wasn't, despite being nearly identical. It's annoying to see even uneven decisions for the same company. It's scary to think about uneven decisions happening across industries and what competitive advantage one company could be getting over a rival. The current exclusion process is opaque, unfair, and inconsistent. We're not asking Commerce to grant every request. We're saying there are major structural issues causing uneven outcomes. We're saying that the deck seems to be stacked toward one side right now and it needs to be rebalanced. I feel for the BIS analysts who are doing the best they can to implement a bad process. They are in an impossible situation. Secretary Ross complains about funding, but with all these issues, it would be the height of irresponsibility by this Congress to give them more money without making changes. I'm urging Secretary Ross to bring true transparency, fairness, and consistency to the process by issuing a final rule that fixes these as soon as possible. A question really quickly just to cue you in. Secretary Ross has said that companies filing exclusions and importing steel and aluminum are quote unquote gaming the system. I doubt that any of you sitting here are gaming the system. I'm guessing all of you here are expecting a fair shot. That's what we want. That's what we're working for, and we're fighting for you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And